Greetings! Welcome back to the Spirit Walker channel. I'm very happy to have you guys here. And if you saw last week's video, you would probably be as amazed as I am as to how the theory of a holographic universe seems to fit a whole range of phenomena, such as what you're seeing right on your screen now, such as the ghost phenomenon, or the apparition phenomenon, the astral entity phenomenon that some people in some cameras are able to record, but not everybody. So it's possible, it's just a possibility that these entities or these phenomena are actually real in some dimension, but when these phenomena are projected into our reality, they have this holographic-like feature that you're seeing right there. It really looks like a hologram. And I like these images because they are security camera images. They're not some person with an iPhone with funny apps trying to fake things. They're actual security camera images. So, and you can see that the people in these images are acting. They're not trying to act. They are just going about their lives and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and yet they are being confronted with these holographic-like images. So how would the theory of a holographic universe compare with the theory of timelines, of parallel timelines that we have been discussing recently, and specifically in the context of the Mandela Effect? So this is what we are going to discuss now. We're going to go through the models and we're going to shed some light into it. I really hope that you like it. So let's imagine, for example, that you have a timeline that is each point on this line is a state of our three-dimensional universe. So the line would be a four-dimensional structure. And let's suppose that this timeline or this reality is reality 1. Now what happens is you could have an alternative timeline. So you could have something like this. We have discussed already in previous videos that this structure suggests that time could be two-dimensional, because time would go from left to right, but also top-down in this case. So different timelines could represent an extra dimensionality of time. And there are some physical models, or some models in physics, that discuss time as not a scalar measure that is, just numbers, so one number following the next, but time could actually be a structure. Time could possibly be a two-dimensional structure, maybe even a three-dimensional structure, but I digress. We have these two parallel timelines, and at one point, at one given point, we could jump from one timeline to another. This would be a jump. It could be a shift in consciousness, or it could be something that is machine generated. So a lot of people suggest a CERN. A lot of people say that it's the jump, the shift was in fact a shift in consciousness, that we are causing this. But we're not going to go there. But what happens is that Unbiased and On the Fence raise a very good point, which is, look, it's very difficult for you to have these two timelines very neatly aligned to each other, and everything is the same except for a few little things. So this model of having parallel timelines like this, or very neatly parallel and very close to each other, this model doesn't really make sense, and he is absolutely right. So, for example, if you are in parallel line or timeline number 2, and you, let's say you caught a cold, you would, using the example that Unbiased and On the Fence used in his latest video, you would, let's say, miss a job interview, and then you would end up in a completely different timeline, or in a completely different reality than reality 1. So it's very, very, very difficult to have two timelines. They are perfectly aligned and perfectly parallel, and only differing in very, very minor details. So that's really very perceptive of Unbiased and On the Fence. But what I had in mind when I presented this model of parallel timelines or different timelines was not something like this that you're watching just now. What I really had in mind was something more like this. So a complete jumble of intermeshing and interconnecting timelines where at any point in time you have hundreds of millions of timelines intersecting. So for example, if you say, for example, today you had eggs for breakfast, but that would be there would be, for example, 4 million different timelines intersecting our timeline right here, right now, in this moment, in which you didn't have eggs for breakfast, you had sausages for breakfast, and that was the only difference that existed from this morning to the moment now, where these timelines are intersecting. And you could, in one of these timelines, make a decision that would change your reality entirely, and in such a way that that timeline would never be parallel to your current reality anymore. But this wouldn't make any difference, because any other one of the 4 million, 5 million, 100,000 million timelines, there are always intersecting, crashing and splitting and all of that stuff into our timeline, would kind of compensate for that. So when I present this model of two neatly, straight lines drawing from one side to the next, this is just a gross simplification for the sake of the explanation. It wasn't supposed to be the timeline or the actual representation, but the Mandela effect would look something like this, right? So for example, you start with one timeline, so you start with timeline 1, then for whatever reason that we're not going to go there, that's a completely separate issue. For whatever reason, there is a crossing, or there is a jump, a quantum jump, or there is an intersection or something. For whatever reason, we get out of timeline 1 and we start living in timeline 2, and our future is in timeline 2, and our past is in timeline 1, and we have memories of timeline 1. So the continuous line in timeline 1 is what we remember, but that doesn't match the broken line of timeline 2. So in the broken line of timeline 2, you have C-3PO sporting a silver leg, and in the unbroken line in timeline 1, C-3PO was all gold. So it's that difference, it's that cognitive dissonance when what we remember doesn't match what we see around us. This could be the Mandela effect. Now, this is just one model, and I believe that we should be looking at all possible models. And two weeks ago, I presented a model that has started to have some traction, which is the simulated reality model, in which the Mandela effect would be just like restarting or rebooting reality, that's another model. That's a completely different model to this one. And last week I presented a model that was a holographic model, a holographic reality model, in which you would have something a little bit like this. Imagine that you have a hologram, a two-dimensional hologram. So I'm just using even a picture that I used in last week's video. So you have a two-dimensional hologram there, and this two-dimensional hologram contains a projection of a three-dimensional world or three-dimensional reality, or even higher realities. But we're just using a two-dimensional hologram because this is easier to imagine, because all our holograms that we have, commercially, you go to a news agent or you go to a bookstore and you get a book on holograms. The holograms there are going to be two-dimensional, so it's easy for us to think of this example. So you could think of this example as of this hologram as a strip. On your left you would have the past, on the right you would have the future, present would be somewhere in the middle. As we discussed last week, one of the key features of a hologram is that you can't really separate a hologram from the person observing the hologram, because the angle that the person uses to observe the hologram changes the picture, changes what is seen in the hologram. If you change the angle that you're looking at the hologram, you get a different picture. So what would happen in this case is you're looking at the hologram, and no, this is not the all-seeing eye. This is not the all-seeing eye. This is just the picture of an eye to represent consciousness observing the hologram. And we discussed last week that you can't separate. If you have a picture, a non-holographic picture or non-hologramic picture, you can actually exist, or that picture can exist independently of the consciousness observing that picture, because the picture doesn't change. But with a hologram, if you change the angle, if there is a consciousness shift, you would have a different picture. You would observe a different picture. So let's suppose that this consciousness right there, the blue consciousness, is observing the reality, the holographic reality, at that particular angle. Now let's imagine that another consciousness, or even the blue consciousness, had shifted the angle of approach, or the angle of attack, or the angle of observation, and now that consciousness, or the red consciousness, is observing the hologram from another angle. So the red consciousness would see something different from the blue consciousness, including a different past and a different future. Now, this model is very interesting and very useful because, first of all, a lot of people discuss, ascension is going to involve a shift in consciousness, blah blah blah, but then no one really explains, or no one really discusses what this shift would be or could be. Now, we could consider, what if this shift is actually a shift in the way that we see reality, in the way that we approach reality? What if there is something happening beyond our four-dimensional reality, or hologram, that our higher selves, for example, decided to change the way that they see our four-dimensional reality, in the same way that these eyes there, the blue and the red, are changing the way that they see this two-dimensional reality, or this two-dimensional holographic reality. So if the holographic theory is correct, it would give a very interesting, a very credible, and a very tangible interpretation for this, airy-fairy concept of consciousness shift, or there was a consciousness shift. What does that mean? Well, I don't know, but maybe it could be akin to you deciding to have a look at the hologram from higher realities, but you deciding to have a look at the hologram from another angle, another physical angle. Maybe it's an angle in the seventh reality, or the seventh dimension, or an angle on the sixth dimension, and we are down here living in our fourth dimensional reality, so 3 dimensions plus time, and our higher self is out there somewhere already living in the sixth dimension, or the sixth density, seventh or eighth, or whatever you have it. And these higher realities projected into our four-dimensional framework would be really akin to a hologram. So you remember last week that I had some videos of ghosts, and they really look like projections. They really look like projections. If you would like to go back and see the video, last week's video, the Mandela Effect and the Holographic Universe, you would see that a lot of these ghost apparitions and aura apparitions and astral entities, astral energies, astral objects, apparitions, they literally look like holographic projections. It's really very interesting. They really look like Princess Leia when the holographic message was coming out of C-3PO. Sorry, not C-3PO, but R2-D2. It really looks like, a bit of a ghost. So maybe there is some credence to this holographic reality theory. Maybe there is something to it, and that is something that we should investigate, and I really ask for your comments down below. And just one additional point that I wanted to make is that this possibility could explain why some people see the Mandela effect and some people don't. So some people see the Mandela effect. So some people would be in this diagram there, some people would be red, and some people that didn't shift would still be looking at the hologram through the angle of the blue consciousness. So if we accept that some consciousnesses, or some of us, some minds have shifted for whatever reason, or their higher selves have shifted or have allowed the shift to take place, and in other cases the shift has not been allowed because there is more that needs to be learned in this third density life that we have developed so far, then you could picture in your head a situation where some people would be just like the red eye over there, and others would be still like the blue eye. So at the same point in time right now, you could have people that remember that the name of the show was Sex in the City, which is what I remember, and some people that would be adamant that the name of the show was always Sex and the City, because of this difference in perspective. Some consciousnesses have shifted, others haven't. Now, this is a possibility. This is one of the reasons why the holographic model is, I think, in my view, it makes slightly more sense than the timeline model, because if you look at the timeline model, and you think that everybody jumped from timeline 1 into timeline 2, then you would imagine you would have a very hard time explaining why some people swear that they have seen that their memories match what is in the dotted line in timeline 2. So a lot of people would swear that, I don't know, Fabrice is spelled in a specific way, or the Bernstein brothers, etc., or that the Ford logo always had that little squiggle in the F, that squiggle never existed. But some people say, well, it was always there. Or the Volkswagen logo always had that line separating the V from the W. You know, some people swear that it was always there, and to me, it was never the case. Now, if every person shifted from timeline 1 from timeline 2, this would not be the case. Therefore, this timeline model seems to be somewhat inferior to the holographic model, because the holographic model allows for this confusion of views and confusion of memories, of some people having a specific memory that doesn't match what we have in records or in the recorded history, and others who have already shifted, having memories that don't reflect what is recorded in our past, in our books, in our shows, etc. So, and the holographic model allows these two different views to coexist, and I think that this is a very strong point in favor of the holographic model, as we are simplifying and representing here in this diagram. So there you go. This is the theory, or at least a very simplified version of what could be happening, what could be taking place. I believe that the model of a holographic universe, or more properly said, a hologramic universe, has a lot of things going for it. I think that it's a robust model, and it has a graphic appeal because it allows us to posit that higher realities, astral realities, which would be extra dimensions or extra dimensionalities. These realities and these objects in these realities could be projected into our three-dimensional existence, our three-dimensional screen, to put it that way. And these would, on top of all of the things that we discussed in this video and in last week's video, this could explain these strange apparitions, these foggy, fuzzy, undefined images that we see every now and then, and some people can see with their naked eye. In other cases, these images are captured by cameras, and as we ascend, these apparitions are going to be more and more the case, because we are going to be our powers, our clairvoyance will open. This is what's happening already with a lot of people. So please leave your messages, leave your views. Thank you very much for being here, and remember that beyond sorrow there is happiness, beyond both there is peace. See you next time.